Hello and welcome everyone to your favorite tabletop RPG podcast, Mastering Dungeons. I'm Sean Merwin here with my very excited and pointy co-host, Teos Abadia. Hey, Teos.
I'm just trying to help. I'm like the color commentator, and you're the main guy telling me what's happening in the game. Can
Uh,
I tell you what's happening in the game?
I would
Even
love
though,
to hear what's happening in the game because I have no idea what's happening in the
all
game.
right, I got two fun things in the mail. Let's get the easiest one out of the way, which is Sly Flourish's City of Arches.
Ooh.
He pays us a lot for this endorsement, but yeah, that was cool.
Yeah.
Very beautiful book. And then I got the U.S. Postal Service sent me their mailer of because I bought D&D stuff, so I'm on it now. And yet again, Dungeons and Dragons was featured in, and I tore out the pages because there's you can still get your D&D gaming journals, and you can get what else was it? Oh, it was the stamp yearbook, which has D&D on the cover. I'm holding these all up for people on the YouTubes. And then just a whole page of like D&D stuff that you can order. And I was like, wow, like there's, like that's awesome. They're still plugging away at that. You can get all this D&D stuff, which is, I mean, to me, awesome, right? Like this is to me
Yeah.
the D&D baloney where you get out into the, grandma and grandpa are seeing this and going like, oh yeah, I remember that.
hmm
That's how grandma and grandpas talk.
I did tell my class that there was D&D baloney in Spain years ago, and they did not believe me. And an internet search did, in fact, bear not fruit, but baloney,
Yeah. Yeah.
apparently.
I mean, I've never tasted it, but I know it's real.
hmm hmm Speaking of knowing it's real, but not wanting to taste it, we have listeners out there who send in various comments, questions, and so forth that we like to gnaw on.
Wow.
And
You have this is a
yeah,
premium day for listeners. Enjoy,
that's it.
listeners.
I peaked. I
This
peaked
is, yeah,
early.
this was the
It's
peak
all downhill
episode.
from here, folks. Just turn this bad boy off right now. But don't turn off our listeners, such as Calvin Bridges of Alos,
Always
who
turn him
asked
on.
this question via our Patreon Discord. Looking over the last 10 plus years of 5e, what published adventures outside of the starter sets are best suited to new DMs? And we touched on this a little bit last week, but let's dig into the entire oeuvre, if you will, of 5e D&D to see what comes in at the top or bottom of our list. Let's go in order.
All right. Do
Um,
it.
so we started with Horde of the Dragon Queen, which I thought, despite some criticism, was a very good adventure for new DMs. Not like brand new, never played before DMs. That's what the starter set's for. But for like people who know the game and wanted to get into DMing, I thought it worked pretty well.
Yeah.
The was it Greenfield or Greenhurst or Green something was
Sounds
the
like Greenfield.
town.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm, yeah.
and it was under attack, and so you had to sort of infiltrate, get to the church, and was that a face for me, Teos, or
No,
oh, you're muted.
that was me trying to remember the name of it and failing terribly.
Gotcha. It's okay. It's not important.
Yeah.
It's not like we know what we're talking about here.
No.
But I thought that was great, and then you would go out on little missions from the safe haven of the church to rescue folks or to investigate. And I thought that worked pretty well for a new DM, all the way up until you get to the point where there's the caravan trip, which could last anywhere from an hour to like 27 sessions. And so at that point, I think it could still be fun with an experienced DM, but for new DMs, that might have been a bit of a rough patch.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I've always had really good experiences with that caravan, both when experienced DM running it and a kind of more not quite first time, but a less not with years and years under their belt, and it was all fun in different ways. But a lot of DMs will talk about how they kind of felt unsupported during that area, and to me, like that's what I would say is all of this this entire list we're going to go through, to me, the theme is unsupported. Like some of them are easier to run than others, but it's never because they've given you specific like tips, right? Like that's not what makes it easier. It's just like an easier structure or a harder structure, I think.
Yeah. I agree. And I think part of that is they expect the starter set to be that the place where you wear the training wheels. And
Yeah.
now I'm not saying that the starter set is perfect, but I'm
Hmm.
saying there's always this pull of we want to support new folks, we want to give them this information, but there's always a cost. There's
Yeah.
always a cost for doing that,
Right.
which is the attention and the space that experienced game masters would say this is all wasted.
Well, sure, but I mean, like, so it's greenest. When you arrive at greenest, it's
Yeah.
like I loved watching this. Right, Mike Merles ran a table when this was newly out. He ran a table of people from like Gizmodo or places like that. I don't even know which. They might not even
Right.
exist anymore. The outfits they were from, but it was like three kind of journalist type peoples. And the first thing they did was like they wanted to run away or attack the dragon.
Right.
Going to the town was not on their list of things to do. And that's the kind of thing that often happens because you're just not supported in any tips of what to do. And this is Mike Merles. Like you can't get a lot more
Yeah.
accomplished than this. And he had to struggle to get them to go to the town.
Right. But what is going to be in the book that makes that any easier?
So one is tips, but two, something that says like, if they're unsure of what to do, people on the soldiers atop say, we need help or something like that. Something to
Yeah. Okay.
call your light the beacon, or you
Right.
set up the encounter so it's a little more like if you want choice. You and I know this, right? We've talked about this before. If
Right.
you want choice, make it a choice that matters, not a weird, oh my god, they're off the playbook on the first page and I don't know what to do with it, right? Like that's
Yeah.
what I mean by guidance, I guess. Like you've either set it up
Yeah.
so these choices work and the DM's going to feel. The thing is also, and this is we're going to talk about this on this list. So many of these starts, you could say, is it strengthening me as a DM, like giving me confidence, letting me get my legs, feeling strong, or does it, drop me off into a pit and I have to claw my way out of it, right? And then I think
Yeah.
some of the worst offenders are because those starts are so rough.
Okay. Well, let's look at the next one then, Princes of the Apocalypse, because I did not read it.
Mm.
And I only played it after my group had already played the beginning. So I
Okay.
don't even know exactly what the beginning is. I'm sure I've read it and studied it, but I don't remember it.
Princess has two beginnings because it was made, and I think this was actually a great call given where this comes out, in the history of 5e. You can either start segueing from the starter set and thus your higher level, or you can start at level 0, level 1 with like all these like easier side quests. And this, I thought the side quests were quite fun, but when you get to that point when the starter set would bridge in, and now the real adventure kicks in. The whole idea is there's this missing Mirabar delegation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's as if the adventure writers themselves forgot about this plot thing that is supposed to be the why of what you're doing various things. And good luck trying to go through the adventure and figure out where the various members of the missing Mirabar delegation ended up, because it's almost impossible. I've had fun with people trying to figure it all out. And the same thing happens around these elemental cults where their individual plots get kind of muddy. So I love the beginning. I love the town. I think that town is just so well developed. It's beautiful. It has really neat, interesting things. And as you come back, there might be new things that happen. So I love the town. I love how it gets started. But myself running it for high school kids who need some good motivation going on, whenever they hit the stuff related to elemental cults, they would just lose, like, why am I even here? They couldn't remember anything, and there was nothing that kind of reinforced the yes, you're here, other than just like these are evil dudes. But for my I guess they were middle school kids, they were just like, well, I could just stab a farmer in the head, like literally, right? Like they just so I can stab anybody. Why am I stabbing these people? There's no larger understanding of it, and got a little muddy.
Okay. Out of the Abyss is next, and we reference this all the time. A very difficult adventure for new DMs to run. when the characters are supposed to start in prison, in an underdark prison, and they're sort of told to escape, but not really given a lot of means to do so. And then also there are a bunch of NPCs. I forgot to count, but it was a double digit number of NPCs
Yeah.
that might be accompanying the characters as they
Yeah.
escape and then move through the Underdark. And yeah, just a lot to juggle. No real clear
It's
path.
yeah. Complex adventure. I mean, it has some really grandiose ideas around all these demon lords, and there's a lot of fun in here, and there's a lot of lore from the Underdark that's really interesting in Drow. But yeah, it's a lot to handle. I think from start to finish. But that start is, woof, it's a lot.
And I tried to remedy it by giving the players the choice to become prisoners, to infiltrate this
Mhm.
slave trade that's going on in the Underdark. And so that allowed them to bring hide equipment on them, bring things they might need. And then how I worked with the NPCs was all the NPCs went with the characters, and every encounter, one NPC would die uh, as sort of a proxy to see how dangerous crossing this ravine is,
Yeah.
encountering this monster is. And then the demon lords, it was perfect because you want the demon lords to, as their Demogorgon, I think was the first one they ran across, and it comes out of the water at Gracklestew, maybe. I can't remember the exact town,
Yeah.
but so yeah, it just like grabs a couple of the NPCs and shoves it, in their mouths, just to show that without having to harm the PCs unduly for it.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I remember folks would publish how-to guides for these first adventures to sort of try to straighten them out, right? Like I remember printing the one for Princes of the Apocalypse, and it was really important. And similarly with Out of the Abyss, like I remember reading the how-to, and then like that was easier, right? Like now I could almost apply this as a cheat sheet to the adventure to help me
Right.
figure things out.
All right, let's jump into Curse of Strahd then. There were two sort of openings to this. They released Death House,
Mm-hmm.
sort of as its own one-off thing, which is it's a good adventure, I think,
Sure.
but it's hard to run at points when you have just this location that you have to explore and there's no real path through it. Uh,
Yeah. And
and
deadly,
then
right?
a very deadly encounter to wrap it up that ended a lot of characters' lives there.
Vintage Perkins. It's
Yeah,
punishing.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think I ran Death House a long time ago, but I played the rest of the adventure. And one of the first things that we did was encounter the Vistani fortune teller.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's an interesting way to get
Yeah.
into the adventure. But then it's not a linear adventure. It's definitely got lots of different paths. So I think it could be challenging for a new
Yeah.
dungeon master after that initial read the fortunes and set everything up.
Yeah. I have not run the fifth edition version of it. The what I hear from various DMs just randomly, like at conventions, it'll come up, my DM, like, we said we wanted to go this way, and my DM said, okay, then I'm canceling today's session. I need to go prep that.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
just, like again, it's that idea of like their choice and openness is good, but it does create work for DM, and your DM might be new, then that can be a lot. But I think in this case, usually the locations have an interesting enough hook, that it all works. And I think with the fortune telling, it really works too. And that's why this adventure gets rated so highly. And I think that castle on the horizon is just always there. You know where the ending is going, and that's compelling.
Yeah,
And so you're driven towards seeing it end, I think, which helps a lot. A lot of times in
yeah,
adventures, you don't know where you're going to go. And so as a player, that motivation is a little, you've done a lot of fun things, so why not leave, you know? Whereas when you know that goal is there, waiting to be solved and addressed, well, then that's always, I think, compelling, and it helps a lot in this adventure.
Mhm. Next is Storm King's Thunder. I believe the opening is in a town.
Yeah, you get
And
one of 3 towns, like
okay,
Golden Fields and one of the Icewind Dale towns, and one other, I think.
but
And you kind of,
isn't there this? It's its own city,
oh
and
yeah,
there's like
actually,
somebody dropping things on it.
yeah, sorry, because I play tested it, and that was an addition. So yes, they had Will Doyle add
Okay,
that intro with the town that's being taken over, and then
right.
yes, the wizard shows up with a floating tower, and not to spoil it,
Mhm.
but there'll be little bits here. But yeah, that beginning is I think better than some. But then you end up in one of 3 towns defending them against giants, and then what the weird part to me, and it's not that it makes it hard to run, but depending on where you are, you get all these side quests that
Mhm.
have you just running around the Sword Coast and a little um, towards the east of that, kind of crisscrossing around until then comes an NPC with guidance towards where to go. And then you're really off on a rocket ship of like addressing the giant problem. That when I ran it, that was the biggest problem, was just that our players were like, I want to go deal with this giant thing. Why am I dropping off bottles of wine or talking to
Right.
Zentarum? Like, and so that was a little hard to deal with, but each individual piece was fine, and I didn't have,
Mhm.
I didn't feel like it was difficult for a DM to run it.
Then we get to Tomb of Annihilation,
Woo!
which I thought the intro was so lacking that I wrote my own intro to get you to 5th level, where you can actually get to the what the adventure's about,
Yeah,
which is stopping the curse, the curse of the people who have been raised. I forgot what it's called now.
the death curse.
Death curse, yes.
Yeah. I mean, the death curse is the problem, and I love this adventure. It's my favorite. It's probably my favorite campaign I've ever run, which is saying something, because that puts it in contention with Pharaoh. But to me, it offers. It's just, first of all, it's this Indiana Jones type thing that I just
Mhm.
love. But the town is tough, and I think the death curse, if you just could control it a bit more as DM, if it had phases, then you wouldn't have such a weird tension between hurry, solve the death curse, and look, dinosaur races. And DM
Mhm.
after DM comments on this, where it's hard to figure that out. And also, the town is a lot without very clear guidance, and a lot of the guidance feels sort of like go do side quests, right? You talk to one of the merchant princes, and they just send you on a weird quest when you're really trying to figure things out. And if you go talk to guides, the guides are like, where do you want to go? And I think if they had done the death curse as steps, and then if you had guides that knew specific parts of the jungle and
Mhm.
could tell you a little bit about it, then you could kind of, the DM would have a little more control, because, okay, you chose this guide, so you're going to be in this quadrant. And then things would
Mhm.
play out as you start to cover all these little pieces a little better. It would give you that footing you need to have a better campaign, because the elements of it are just, there's so many neat locations in the jungle and even in the town, and there is a lot of potential. There are a lot of these themes, like the flaming fist coming in, right? Like, it really neat stuff.
Mhm.
The more that you
Yeah.
grow with it and become a better DM, I think that campaign can really shine. But yeah.
Mm. Okay. Waterdeep Dragon Heist.
Mhm.
I I remember having fun playing the opening. I know that you got a tavern in Troll Skull
Full
Alley,
skull. Yeah.
but I don't remember what led to that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of Volos and relatives and Neverember,
Oh,
and
right,
there are all these kind
right.
of important personages that come into play, which is good because that reflects the city. You're
Right.
rubbing shoulders with interesting people. Um, there are some pieces in Dragon Heist that I think around, like how to run Troll Skull, what do you do with it after that one chapter, that are a little, rough. But in general, I think this is pretty fun. It's just not a heist, that
Okay.
can be that expectation piece. Like, I remember Luna LeBeouf reviewing Tomb of Annihilation and saying, I bought this because it kind of looked cool, and then I realized, oh, this is kind of deadly and actually isn't what I want to run. And I think sometimes the D&D adventures have been hard. They don't really tell the DM what they're picking up if you're a new DM. And Dragon Heist is a great example where you think you're running some sort of heist and you're not. You're running sort of city intrigue and, and there's some interesting parts like the different seasons, right? Well, who is the actual NPC? And that's fun because it's replayable, but it adds a little difficulty to like run this encounter now, not this one, right? Because you are this season. But I think in general, it's done pretty well. I think it's really well written. Yeah.
Descent into Avernus. I played this and I thought the intro was fine. The main criticism of the whole thing was it's called Descent into Avernus, but you don't really descend into Avernus until much later. And there's this whole added bit in Baldur's Gate that doesn't really connect to anything. So I don't think it's terribly difficult to run. I just don't think it connects well to the rest of the adventure.
Yeah. I think there are bits here and there. I have not run it or played it, so just reading it. But yeah.
Rime of the Frost Maiden. Well, I think we did like a 72 part series on that, so you just go back and watch that.
Yeah, I mean, it needs connective tissue. It tries to create a sandbox environment, and none of the pieces are necessarily super hard to run. But to get that satisfying feel out of it, I don't know that it does much to help you. You have to bring your game into making it feel like it's all a good story. Especially when your story can end halfway through. So.
Yep. Wild Beyond the Witchlight. I did not play it, did not run it. I know that there's a carnival involved and you get to do some things at the carnival, which is generally fun as long as the players dig that and connects to a story at some point.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of it is if you as a DM will lean into the genre of lots of fae stuff, lots of nursery rhyme type things, then that's great. And your players too, but especially you've got to. And when I meet or when I read or hear from DMs that don't like the genre, it just, well, it's not going to fit because it's definitely giving you that kind of experience.
The Acquisitions Incorporated book, written by a couple of knuckleheads, apparently. I'm partial to the opening for reasons that some people may know, some people may not. But we tried to make it so it's very easy to get into the story. You don't have to work too hard to run the encounters or introduce the major players in the story.
Well, and I think a thing we tried to do too was to align it. I love the start. You wrote the first 3 parts of the adventure, or the last 3, and Scott made it all better, and then the Penny Arcade teams made it even better too. But the book is really trying to say, here's how you can have this kind of an experience. And so every chapter ends with running downtime and with doing something involving with your franchise and getting to put the players get to put their spin on it. And so it's very deliberate, right? I think it's got a lot of purpose to it. And it is trying to talk to the DM around those kind of things that are new. So I hope we did a good job around that. I hear good things. And people, say like I remember Merrick saying, I'm not running it, but there's a table at the store that's running it, and they're just laughing all the time. And I'm like, yes.
Challenge completed. Dragonlance adventure. Again, did not really run it or play it, sort of skimmed it. It seems like these war-themed adventures are pretty clear and easy to run because it's not like you have to search to find the story. The story is there's a war and we're going to throw these encounters in front of you that are quite easy to run to demonstrate that. Yeah. Now, how it connects to the entirety of the story is a completely different animal and not always clearly delineated.
Yeah, I think if you're completely new to Dragonlance, to DMing, this adventure is going to present a few challenges in places around things like NPCs and their connections. There's some pieces in the story where it feels a little thin and you're going to have to kind of either ignore it, or if you really want it to matter as it should, then you've got to find how to add that back in. There's a lot of moving around, and there are some pieces where it feels almost movie like, and sort of like you'll go this way while the other troops go this way, and it's you might as players go why, but that's what
Mhm.
you're supposed to do. But in general, it works, right? I think the more that you know what Dragonlance is, then you may have an additional layer of desires that you want out of the story that can make it, either a better or worse fit, depending on how much you like to do that work yourself.
Yep. And the final three, Spelljammer, Planescape, and Vecna, uh, Vecna, Eve of Ruin, I should say.
Yeah.
I read, did not play, did not really engage with in too much detail.
Yeah, I think they generally don't present the big problems of some of those earlier adventures, like having a dozen NPCs, but they are it's really, like we said, around that connective tissue and how you feel good about it. I don't see well, a couple of these have things like the villain that gets revealed partway through, and that can be hard for a new DM to land. Um, but let's see. So if you had a brand new DM say to you, "Hey, give me 2 adventures I should consider running because I'm brand new," what would you go with?
Don't make me say it, Teos. Don't make me say the one we wrote.
All right, you can't choose Acquisitions Incorporated.
Okay. I would then say likely Storm King's Thunder,
Mm-hmm.
uh, because I just like the closed, easy to grasp concept of that opening village being attacked.
Mm-hmm.
And oof, probably Descent into Avernus because it
Really?
starts with it starts with, well, it starts a little bit strange with trying to get into the city with all the refugees. But then it's pretty clear you have to investigate. You're told,
Yeah.
investigate this or we'll throw you in jail, roughly.
Yeah.
And so it puts you on a path where the game master, once you get over that hurdle, is all right, go here and investigate this, go into this basement of this mansion. It's linear enough that a game master can manage it. It gives you enough wiggle room where you can tell your own story a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
But that's just me.
Yeah, so I echo your Storm King. I think Storm King is really good. And I think there are others that are pretty similar. If you like the genre of Fae, then I think Witchlight is a pretty reasonable run. It's exceptionally well written. It has really fun scenes. If you are going to be okay with leaning into that fun, if you are a new DM that is more of the I want 4 goblins in a room, that's what's straightforward versus I want an interesting NPC to play, and I want a riddle, or I want to be, tricksy in this kind of scene. I've got kids who are riding a treant, that kind of scene. If you're not into that kind of one thing and you want more straightforward, then I might say something like Rhyme, because I think what's nice about Rhyme is that if you don't care about the connective tissue, if you just kind of want to murder some stuff, then these will be interesting things to run around and find and murderize and so on. And so to kind of have an experience, it's probably not, if you don't care about the connective tissue, it works. Dragon Heist, I also think would work pretty well in that sort of reasonable, just follow the path and that you choose and go with it.
There you go. We have time for one question because it's quick.
Yeah.
Homemade Heroes via YouTube saying, I'm planning to run Peril and Pinebrook at a kids TTRPG convention. And I was wondering if you had any suggestions on how to adjust the challenge for running with a group of kids from 8 to 14 of mixed experience. I plan to use the pre-gen characters so we can get straight into the action. Thanks so much for keeping this amazing conversation going. All right. So it's made obviously for brand new DMs and brand new players and mostly young players and DMs. So if you have some players who are a little more experienced and you as the game master are obviously more experienced, the only thing I would change is to make the monsters a little bit more deadly by adding a little tactical wrinkle. So this is meant to be very simple, straightforward, not just in terms of running it, but in terms of playing it. So it's not terribly deadly. So if you, spoilers for this adventure, if the icicle monsters at the beginning blow up when destroyed, like a mephit might, and you put a few of them in there, one per PC is what the instructions say. So if you have 6 PCs and 6 of them, the first time one of them blows up and does a point of damage to everyone within 5 or 10 feet, now the players, even if they're not experienced, will say, "Oh, we can't be near it when it explodes. So let me uh, and you could even have them damage themselves. Like the icicles, when a monster blows up, it also damages the icicle monster next to it. Then you get the characters trying to herd them into a group so you can kill one and see if the other ones blow up too. Uh, so something like that doesn't make it more difficult per se, but it makes it a little more tactical. And then the same thing with the final combat. Have the egg snatchers have an extra attack rather than just biting, have them have a kick attack that sends a character flying across the room and hits a stalactite or a stalagmite, uh, and takes a little extra damage. It just adds to the dynamic nature. And we're going to talk about that in our main episode today, is adding terrain or interesting circumstances to encounters.
Yes.
So that's what I would do. One thing you could do is have stalactites fall from the ceiling, unless they make an acrobatics or a nature check at the start of their turn to avoid that. So it just gives one more die roll, one more potential hazard that they will be looking out for. That was my 30-second answer.
Yeah.
But whatever
Love it.
works to make people happy, make it happen. All right. With that, let's get into our news and commentary section, starting with who's leaving D&D this week.
Oh, it was so sad
Well,
to. Oh,
apparently no one.
oh. Well, that's a
At
change.
least as of 1:30 p.m. on the 21st of April.
This
No
just
one
in.
has.
Nobody has
Yeah.
left D&D this week.
Yep.
Breaking news.
So hopefully the trend will continue for at least the next week when we can check in again.
Yeah. But we did get big
But
news.
yeah, what is leaving Wizards of the Coast is the system reference document that will hopefully be attached to an open gaming license so that people can start actually creating content legally under the 2024 rules. Teos, you want to lead us through this one?
Sure. So it will come out April 22nd on the Creative Commons license. And you could always still use SRD 5.1 if you want to create with the 2014 rules. So they specifically spoke to that as an option. It's, of course, a legal option, but they just address it and acknowledge it. But 5.2 will let you do that 2024 fun. And they will later publish a conversion guide, they said, that will help creators update their content to the new rule set. More details will be released for this. I thought that was kind of neat. They then talked about a couple of different things, including errata, Shawn.
Okay. So when the errata is released for rules within the 5.2 SRD, the new one, the SRD will later reflect these changes and its version number will be updated. So we'll get SRD 5.21, 5.22, etc. And then all future versions of the SRD will be released exclusively under the Creative Commons CC BY 4.0 for consistency and broader compatibility. So, Teos, what does this mean?
Well, one of the things that it means is, first, I'm really, really happy to see just errata enter the conversation, because starting somewhere in 2014 after Spelljammer, it's like they forgot that errata existed, and it became we can change whatever we want on the D&D Beyond side, and we never have to address the fact that some people have paper products. And
Right.
There have been a lot of changes to this, and some of them are great, like a whole inclusivity set of changes that were done that I'm totally for. And I get why they don't want to draw attention to it, but it's maybe worth saying, like, in some ways you may want that new printing, right? That has these changes. And so I wish they would just own up to it and capture this. And I hope that's what we're seeing here that's going to happen, because they're at least going to want to do it for the SRD. The other thing is they talk about Creative Commons left and right. they do not talk about the OGL. And so I think what it means is that we've seen the end of updates specific to the OGL, right? That they are looking forward towards the Creative Commons. And that's fine because you could always use the OGL. You can go back and use it. It's a little bit tricky. I have some videos on it, but you can't just with CC, it's really easy to say, hey, I'm drawing this and it's from here, and you add the requisite line to cover it. OGL requires a whole process. And so if you're a creator, just know that you've got to do your homework if you're going to use the OGL. But it's not going away. It's just that it's clear that Wizards is not focused on it at all, right?
Now, what about the IP items that have been in certain documents?
Yeah. We saw some things like I think Beholder was used as a term, and then Strahd was in there, and a few other things. And in a Forbes interview, Jess Lanzillo said, we've added some stuff. It's a little bit expanded. There might be a few reskins of things that might have a specific IP-associated name that we might call something else. You'll still have the exact same mechanical content for that.
Okay. And they've created a new creator FAQ page to help support the creator community. And so they're developing this creator FAQ page to provide information regarding third-party products, fan content, and more. On this new page, you can find resources like the soon-to-be-released conversion guide, as well as information about the fan content policy, D&D Beyond's homebrew tools, and pointing your readers to official D&D content that's not in the SRD. So what did Jess Lanzillo say about this, Teos?
So on Forbes, she said, we're expanding our Creator Hub resources. There will be conversion calculators and things like that. And I thought that was really interesting because one of the big things is 2014 tells you how to make a monster to 2014 specs. 2024 doesn't address that at all. So might we see something like that? I've been hoping that we would. And this whole idea of the Creator Central, I mean, I love it. I think this is absolutely great. It's also what you would do if you as D&D want to increase that revenue that's coming from third parties via D&D Beyond, right? The more that you want to open that, then you want high quality. And so I'm glad they're seeing that. One of my big fears was that they would look at 2024 and say, we want to not help creators at all, but magically get all this revenue from creators. And you can't have great creations without helping to lift up creators. So I'm really glad to see this.
Yep. And they're also going to be putting out some free new rules or new free rules. And this is interesting for me because it goes back to the class I'm teaching. I started teaching it in 2020, so I could always just, for our D&D segment, just put up the free rules for them.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have to go out and buy the player's handbook because several of them are not gamers. They just want to learn about writing. Yeah. So this was great. And now when this class started this year, I thought, oh, we've got the new rule set. I'm going to have to switch over. There's going to be two different. And I started to switch over, but by the time we got to the lessons on D&D, there were no new free 2024 rules for people to download. So I had to go back to the 2014 version to teach the lessons that way. But now that I've taken that giant step backwards, new rules will be coming.
And I'm curious what it means. So one of the things is they've gone back and forth between calling it basic rules to then calling it free rules, which is what they were calling it. And now it's going to be called D&D Beyond Basic Rules for 2024. So I don't know why that exactly is, but something's there with the thinking. And they kind of, the way they talked about it was like it's something about it being like a D&D Beyond focused. So I'm curious whether it'll just be the rules, or is this formatting going to be done in some way around this quote unquote learn how to play the game? They did mention, which is a big point of confusion a lot of times for folks, the basic rules cannot be used in content creation, right? That's the SRD. So this has a different purpose. It's not for creators. It's for people who want to play and see how D&D goes, and then hopefully buy it after that. So it'll be interesting to see what format it takes, whether it is just the rules or whether they, divide it up to try to somehow teach it. teach the game? And do they have a PDF version? Because as you said, it's really hard to say to someone, look, just use this when it's only on D&D Beyond, right?
Yeah. And it's to put it in perspective of 2014. For 2014, they put out the SRD, which was 400 pages containing lots of the material, but only one sample feat, only one sample background. In the free rules, they gave 4 classes, 4 species, 4 backgrounds, but that was it. And that was only about 180 pages, and it also explained the game. So that's why they were saying you can't use the free rules to create
Yeah.
from,
So
because
the
they may be
SRD
putting
versus the free rules had different amounts. Yeah. And
right.
and I know like our friend Scott Fitzgerald Gray would always say you can't really run a campaign at certain levels of play with the free rules because the free rules don't contain sufficient monsters, but they actually are in the SRD, and you should
Right.
pull them across because it's not like you're gatekeeping these. They're not just must buy this product. So if I can get them in the SRD, why aren't they in the free rules? So we'll see whether they address any of those differences.
Yeah. So we've talked about Errata, and it looks like that 2024 will address the Errata in great detail, as well as provide some sage advice, which we haven't seen for a while now. So where and when did we learn about this, Teos?
Yeah, it was part of the same announcement, but then with an additional piece to it, which is saying that what we will now get, and we already have a version now, is so starting on April 16th, we have not just the D&D Beyond changelog page, which is has at times been useful and at times not, because it's written more like what you might get out of the IT team telling you what has changed when there are very important things that they're missing. And so there have been some champions who have been on our Discord sharing, for example, Tom Dunn sharing, here's what actually changed beyond what the changelog is telling you. And so hopefully we're going to see more and more of this actually be plain English, useful. Here's what's going on. And that has started with 3 separate downloadable PDFs, one for each core book. So you can now go to this changelog page, link in our show notes, or find it on D&D Beyond, and you can download a PDF that has pretty much everything that has changed for the player's handbook and for the DMG and for the MM. And that then helps you to know, for example, that the Carrion Crawler changed, or that the Goliath changed. And so all these changes are pretty critical to have a handle on. You can now download those PDFs and print them, put them in your player's handbook, or at least just know to tell your player, hey, this has changed, or if you're running a monster, this has changed, and so on.
Mm-hmm. And just to be clear, there's about 24 changes to the monster manual according to this. And as Teos said, corrections to some feats like Grappler, Poisoner, and Telekinetic. 9 spells are updated, especially the damage using the Conjurer spells. So it's not insignificant if you are taking part in a long-term, high-level campaign.
Yeah, if you're curious, friend of the show, Treant Monk, on the YouTube channel Treant Monk's Temple, there was a really nice video overview that walks through why the spells needed to change. And this is really around upcasting. There was just bad math around giving you too much damage when you upcast. And so most of those problems have now been corrected. Not all of the ones that probably should be, but it's a good initial start. There was a disagreement as to how the temporary hit points worked around polymorph shape change and true polymorph. So that's now addressed. One thing that they did do is they just said that in the appendix, the monsters have been updated to be what the monster manual is. And that's not super helpful if you have players who are shape changing or summoning or whatevering, and they need to look at those versions. So in our show notes, folks who support us on Patreon, you'll find where a friend of the show, Tom Dunn, gave us a list of actually all of the changes in that player's handbook list, where there are actions reworded and various, sometimes statistics have changed. Any number of things could have changed there. So you'll see a full list of those in our show notes. The DMG changed the section on chases, where you can risk exhaustion. So it just does some clarification around that. They fixed a typo that I had seen and mentioned on my Bastions video, where the treasure hoards, one of the third row had an incorrect value, so they've corrected that. And yeah, like you talked about the monster manual, there were a lot of cases where they said once per day, but they didn't clarify whether that meant one of these spells once per day or each. So they've now added an each. And then things like ACs, hit points, initiatives for various monsters, those have been updated. So you can see the list in our show notes or go check out the D&D Beyond page. Minor fixes to various monsters that probably won't affect play. Things like a white dragon, ancient white dragon does a charisma 18 instead of 14. But some things like the Carrion Crawler uses Constitution for its paralyzing tentacles saving throw now. So some of that can matter.
Speaking of things that need to be errated, Tariff Watch. We're still in the who knows phase, as the U.S. has threatened a 245% tariff on goods from China starting on 16th. We're still at above 150%. And now we're starting to see some of the blowback from that, as especially board game publishers begin to close shop without the necessary information they need to know how this is going to really affect everyone in the long term.
Yeah, and there's a creator I've been monitoring as they try to talk to fulfill their Kickstarter. They're trying to talk to all the different options. And they keep getting told that even for their book, that this exemption they don't think applies, or that they're not comfortable enough doing it because of the trouble of having to go through this process shipping out of China. And so even though in theory there should be this exemption for books, you really have to work hard to find somebody who will, a broker who is willing to go through that effort, at the point of shipping to get it out. Without that extra charge, and with the charge is ruinous. So it's really difficult. Anybody who's going to print or manufacture out of China right now is really dealing with a lot of burden.
The Neverwinter MMO Red Harvest has been released, or will be released, coming on May 6th. Red Harvest is inspired by the movie Honor Among Thieves. You are our local Neverwinter MMO expert, Teos. So what else do we have going on there?
Yeah, I was surprised by this. It's like, wait, the movie came out when, and you're doing this now? Okay, sure. But we're gonna go to Thay if you play the game, and the map is inspired by the Red Harvest scene where they channel in all of those terrible energies, and Zastam has all these terrible plans to murderize the population and turn them into undead. So apparently adventurers are going to get called to thwart whatever Zastam is up to. And even now, there's an Easter-themed event where heroes search for eggs around the lands to make the gnomes who live near Gracklstew, the Zverfneblin, to make them happy because they need eggs for their feasts or something. And none of it makes sense. But at the end of it, to make it even more wild, you go to where their festival is being held. And they've been beset by our favorite chunky dragon Themberchod, and you have to both fight him and feed him to get him to go away. And at the end, he rolls off the map, which I think is
awesome. So link in our show notes there. You can go to playneverwinter.com for more details. And now for something completely different, Teos. NPR has reminded us that this is the 50th anniversary of Monty Python and the Holy Grail, the most often quoted movie at D&D tables since inception. And so NPR is asking you to go share any special memories on their site. You have until April 25th to do that, and the story will release on May 2nd.
Yeah, I mean, what is gaming without some form of burn her or it got better or any number of jokes coming across? And so, I think at least for those of us of our generation, Monty Python is lockstep with our experiences of playing D&D.
For sure. In our creator corner this week, we have one creation. It's called Monster Week Dragons, and it's on YouTube. YouTube creators Ginny D and Pointy Hat have organized an annual community event, and this year the theme is going to be dragons. Creators are being encouraged to create a video related to dragons and then let the two organizers know, and the playlist will be shared every day with the most recent videos.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna actually record myself playing that ridiculous Thumberchod
Yeah.
fight so that people can see what that looks like and submit that. So.
Awesome.